anxiety, depression, stress, all these things, they can hit anybody at any time, and a lot of the time they're not that far away.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Getting Back Up with me, Anthony Ogogo. And as I'm sure you're aware by now, this is the podcast where I talk to inspiring people that have done great things in both their life and or career, but only after suffering massive setback and adversity, or as in today's case, amidst suffering massive setback and adversity. This is your weekly dose of hope and inspiration to be inspired by my wonderful guests. And for those with the ability to watch me today on YouTube, you can see that I'm lying in a bed, another bed, in another city, in another part of the world. I've been traveling the world wrestling. I've got another match tomorrow night. I've been collaborating with some wonderful people for my brand new fitness app, Ogogo Fitness, launching really soon. But with that being said, I've still found time to knock out another banging podcast, which today is. Today I talk to the fiery redhead Clive Branson. What a story this man has. This guy was in the RAF, worked for the Ministry of Defence for 17 years. He had an unbelievable life, and his life changed in a matter of weeks. He lost his dad, he lost his mum, his dad through Parkinson's, his mum through COVID, and these big events spiraled his life. It was so bad he got admitted to a psychiatric hospital where he stayed there for 10 weeks, 10 long weeks. And Clive's arguably biggest setback, biggest piece of adversity that he's still coming back from is Clive got diagnosed with motor neuron disease. The disease most commonly associated with Professor Stephen Hawking. And Clive goes deep into the struggles and the setbacks and the things that make him get up in the morning, that make him carry on, persevere. This is an amazing conversation. I don't want to give any more away. You're going to love it. Take notes, listen, learn, and enjoy this. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Clive Branson, dear sir, welcome to the Getting Back Up podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me onto this wonderful podcast.
You're very welcome, sir. And as you know, because I know you're a listener to the podcast, this is a podcast where I talk to inspiring people that have done great things in both their life and or career, but only after suffering or amid suffering massive setback and adversity. Because some people go through something very bad in their life and they learn, they grow from it, and they're now in a different space in their life. You're very much in the midst of your adversity, right? You've had some setbacks, like, recently we're going to talk all about them, and you're still going through yours, right? And you've kind of had to get up numerous times, but you're still plowing ahead. I'm sure you're aware of the Rocky quote: life's not about how hard you can hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forwards. And you've been hit hard, and you keep on going, and you keep on going. We're going to talk all about that. But I've got two questions to ask you before we start with your story. The first question is the most important question of the day. Please don't lie to me, young man. How the bloody hell are you?
Do you know what, Anthony? I'm absolutely spiffing. Thank you very much for asking. And
are you really?
Listen, I really am. I'm not here to flannel anybody. I'm certainly not here to try and pull the wool over anybody's eyes. This is me. This is Clive. And listen, I don't do this on my own. My wife is an absolute force of nature. I've known her since I was about 13 years old. We've got an incredible family. So I've got a support network that not everybody's got. And it's a huge blessing. So the short answer, Anthony, is definitely I'm great. Thank you very much for asking.
Nice. Wow. Gratitude. You sound very grateful.
I learned gratitude at a later age. I was a bit of a late bloomer in many aspects of my life and my personality. Gratitude is something that I've learned through making mistakes. But I'm genuinely grateful. Genuinely grateful.
We're going to come back to gratitude. I'm going to ask you some questions now, off topic. We'll talk about gratitude. Then we'll dive into why you and I are talking today. You mentioned off camera and on camera, you're a massive boxing fan, huge boxing nut. So come on, who is the greatest fighter of all? The greatest fighter and your favourite fighter? Oftentimes they're the same. It could be two very different people.
There's so many, as you know.
And Clive, listen, so it's not awkward. I'll take myself out of it. I'm excluded. I'm excluded. So feel free to answer away.
There's a bit of a distance between the two of us, so I haven't got to do too much grovelling. But I think I'm 53 years old. I was first introduced to boxing properly when my dad, God rest his soul, spent the day with Alan Minter when Alan Minter had just won the WBC, I think,
middleweight title, middleweight
championship of the middleweight championship of the world. And I mean, my dad, it was a corporate thing. My dad wasn't a boxer, but it was a corporate day. Anyway, Dad comes home to his 10-year-old son, me, and gives me a black and white postcard of Alan Minter on the bag. Hi Clive, best wishes, Alan Minter. And I'm thinking, wow, look at this guy, there's nobody tougher than my dad, but he looks tough, and it got me interested. And I have been a lifelong fan of this incredible, wonderful, crazy sport ever since. So I grew up obviously with the Tyson effect and everybody else, and closer to home, the Nigel Benn Eubank things. And a lot of people say that Sugar Ray Robinson was the best actual boxer, and I can't argue with that. But I always go back to Marvin Hagler, Anthony. I always go back to Marvellous Marvin Hagler.
Who dethroned Alan Minter?
Yeah, of course, in such horrific racial sort of scenes. It was just horrific. They couldn't even present him the belt, could they? He had to get out. But I think with Alan Minter, he came up the hard way. He didn't have the backing of the Don Kings and people like that. He really had to wait. He was on the same bill as Sugar Ray Leonard when Sugar Ray Leonard was getting, £400,000 for a fight or dollars, and he was getting something like 4,000. I mean, he really did come from the outside in. He never moved in weight. He stuck to middleweight. He knew where he could perform the best. And what a guy. I mean, it's just so sad that he's no longer with us. But I think I'm going to stick to Marvellous Marvin Hagler. What about you? Who's yours?
So, favourite and greatest, you think?
Yeah.
Both, yeah, nice. Mate, she was so tough, man. He was so tough. So let me ask you this question. So, and for the non-boxing fans amongst us listening to this, if you're not, we'll get into Clive's tremendous story in a moment, but this is fascinating. I don't talk boxing much anymore because I had my farewell from the sport was quite painful, so I don't talk much about it. But I still love the sport. It's given me this amazing life that I'm very grateful to have. So now and then I have little nod back of appreciation. This is my nod this month talking about boxing. So do you think Hagler was robbed against Leonard that night in Vegas?
I maybe wouldn't. I think robbed's probably a bit too far because it was an incredibly close decision. But I do think he won. And I think he had to surrender so many things in the negotiations. Stuff has come out, hasn't it, over the years, and it was really in Leonard's favour. And Sugar Ray Leonard, I mean, what a hero, unbelievable. But no, I do think he won that fight. Yeah.
I think for me, Leonard just nicked it. Leonard, you mentioned hero. They always say don't meet your heroes. I met Leonard a few times now. What a lovely man. Gave me his email address. I can email him whenever I want. He always gets back to me straight away. Nicest, absolute sweetheart. Leonard is great. My favourite fighter, Muhammad Ali. Everything he did. He was more than boxing. And at the time, boxing was the biggest sport in the world. He was more than boxing, and what he did, everything in and outside of the ring. And for Ali, I'm sure you're aware of this. Ali, his 3 peak years, he never boxed. He just beat Cleveland Williams. They took away because he refused to fight the Vietnam War. I love that Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali literally is Mr. Getting Back Up. I'd love to have Ali on this podcast. God bless his soul. They took away his passport, took away his boxing license. He couldn't fight because he refused to fight a crooked war. Not any war is good, obviously, but a really, really, really bad war. Refused to fight, and those 3.5 years he didn't box were his peak years, and no one got to see how good he could have been in his peak years. Anyway, Ali, my favourite, and the greatest Sugar Robinson. Goodness me, watching I love the old. I'm old school in a lot of my aspects in life, and like you, I'm a bit of a technophobe, but I don't like computers and stuff. That's why Lawrence is always here to help me out with the edit and help me out with kind of setting these podcasts up. But also Leonard as well. As I mentioned, Leonard, my favourite British fighter, Michael Watson. Love Michael Watson. He was so good, man. But anyway, so skilled. He could do everything, and he was tough as old boots. But he was the best out of the British lot. The Eubank, the Benz. He was the best one.
Yeah.
He was the best one from.
And I think they say that too as well, don't they, Anthony? I've heard them say before.
And they don't say he made Nigel Benn quit. Like, the first fight I ever saw wasn't live, watched on VHS tape. Michael Watson versus Eubank. So Michael Watson versus Ben, Finsbury Park, and he stopped him in the 6th round. And a bit like Leonard Hagler actually. Like Benny came out with this snazzy thing. He had his hair done all flash. He had all the people in the army like playing him out, and he was the star. And Watson he was in the ring, didn't even get an entrance. And then Watson boxed his ears off. Made him quit with a jab. Like, the guy was tough as old boots, a consummate professional, and so sad happened to him. And someone had, like, Michael, for those who don't know, Michael Watson, brain damage from a fight with Eubank, and he's not in the best of health anymore. And when something bad happens to somebody, that's when they get lavished with praise, because, I know he's now in a wheelchair and he can't walk and he can't talk very well. And they always say he's the best, but accident at all. Like, he was the best. They don't say that because he's in a bad way. Now, he was the best. But anyway, this isn't a boxing podcast. I want to move on into real life. So Clive, why are we talking today? What setbacks have you faced? What challenge have you faced or are still facing now? And why has fate brought us here today talking about your story?
Well, Anthony, there was a perfect storm brewing for me and for my loved ones that obviously I was unaware of and couldn't see coming. So I'm going to take you to 2017 now. I've enjoyed almost 20-year career with the Ministry of Defence. My wife and I got 4 children. We've now got grandchildren. So everything was normal. My dad was suffering from Parkinson's disease and ultimately dementia. And this was an incredibly proud, independent, hard-working man. So to watch that deterioration was really, really difficult. My mum and dad got divorced when I was 10, but he had a partner, a wonderful, wonderful French lady called Valerie, and she stuck by his side right till the end, and she should have a medal the size of a frying pan, really, because it's not an easy thing to do. But so that was going on. Ultimately, my dad died in the 2018. I'd started up a small health and safety consultancy. I was busy. But things weren't right, Anthony. Looking back, hindsight, as we say, is a wonderful thing. And getting a bit older, it gives you the ability to reflect properly. And probably my concentration wasn't great. My patience wouldn't have been great. And I just wasn't the normal attentive husband, dad, granddad, friend, that all these hats that I wear with pride. And I'm a migraine sufferer. I've had migraines all my life, and I had a stroke at home. And there's another podcast there somewhere. You'll have to get me on part 2. But I'm experiencing at this point some mild weakness in my left foot and my left ankle, and I'm walking Alfie to school, and I'm thinking, I'm going to fall over here, and no pain, no discomfort. So I was seeing a neurologist at that time about my headaches. I had all the scans to make sure there was nothing physically wrong, and then they said it could be neurological. So I go and I mention it to the guy, and he does a few rudimental tests. And ultimately, this is probably a 2-year period. So I'm going every 6 months, getting no information, and life just gets in the way, doesn't it? Ultimately, Anthony, the guy says to me, I'm sending you to Oxford. And I'm, okay, that's fine. Why Oxford? He said it's a centre of excellence for motor neurone disease. And it kind of went over my head a little bit. I'm thinking motor neuron disease, Stephen Hawking, that's pretty much as far as my knowledge went. But I had the presence of mind to say to him, are you sending me to Oxford because you think I've got motor neuron disease, or is it because you don't know? He says, oh no, I think it's because you have, and you must understand that if you have, there's no treatment. So the appointment will come through the post, and I'll see you again, bye-bye. And I was out the door. So that triggered a real difficult period, the communication between my wife, then my children, then friends. But I just thought, do you know what, we're not going to talk about it to anybody. We'll just keep it to ourselves, because I'm going to go to Oxford. They'll rule it out, and they'll find out what's really going on. So the appointment came very quickly. My wife came with me, and Anthony, they'd probably got about 2 years worth of tests in front of them then, and they really are a centre of excellence, probably in Europe, not just this country. The professors there, they're world-renowned guys. So they've got all the nerve study tests, the scans and everything. So they do a few more of these similar rudimental tests, but very quickly they said, no, Clive, you've got slowly progressive motor neuron disease, which is, it's very individual. If you've got MND aggressively, it stays aggressive. It doesn't slow down. And if you've got it slow, touch everything that's wood, it stays slow. But there is no treatment. I mean, they give you a tablet called refusal, but this is something that might extend your life by 2 or 3 months if you've got the aggressive version. And it was first prescribed over 30 years ago. So there's nothing at all in the system. I mean, the Motor Neurone Disease Association does wonderful, incredible work. The late Doddy Weir, the rugby player, he raised millions and millions and millions. And the point of that was, it was to go into research. It was to go in to try and find a cure. Obviously, Rob Burrow, the Leeds Rhinos hero, is doing exactly the same thing with his best friend, Kevin Sinfield and all. They're raising really good money, and they're putting awareness into the disease. But it's an incredibly cruel, traumatic disease. So my wife's sitting next to me. This is the lady I've known since I was 13, and she's in pieces, and I've just about still got red hair, definitely still got a big gob. I can come up with something to maybe alleviate things or to crack a joke, but I'm stuck now. I'm lost. I don't know what to say to her to sort of make things better. So we end up wandering around the hospital, and we got lots of help and support and loads of leaflets and things. But ultimately, it's up to you to get back in your car and go home and process it. And Victoria, my wife, she took control of the communication. But here's a real important point that I want to make, Anthony. I wanted to make sure that this isn't something that, you can't talk about that in front of Clive, tread on eggshells. If you've got a question, ask somebody else. No. If you're my friend, if you're my son, whoever you are, if you want to ask me something, if you want to take the mickey out of me, we have a joke, absolutely. Don't tread on eggshells, don't feel uncomfortable. And if it's in a year's time before you somehow pluck the courage to break it and talk to me, no problem, I'm ready. You talk to me when you're ready. And that's worked well for us as a family. So that's where I was at. But I then very quickly became absolutely gripped by severe acute anxiety. If you'd have said to any of my friends, sorry, Anthony, I was cut you off there. Were you
No, not at all. It's just there's lots there in that bit. So motor neuron disease, for those that don't know, I'll be very honest with you, I don't know a great deal about it. Is it, in the nicest possible way, is it a death sentence?
Absolutely, Anthony. It is. There is no cure. Basically, the motor neurons in the motor section of your brain, they die off. So the signals that your motor neurons send to your nerves, which then activate your muscles, every muscle in your body, slowly the signal doesn't get to where it's meant to get to. And that's the problem I have with my foot and my ankle. I wear a splint when I walk. My core strength's not great. I can't walk as far, or I can't stand very long, but I'm still very, very independent. Still driving, still out in nature every day. I do volunteer gardening and things like that. So, but the realization is that whatever your journey, you can't change that journey. It is without doubt a death sentence. And I see an awful lot of poorly people when I go there, Anthony, that have got the aggressive version. And I remind myself every time I go, well, Clive, you're getting up, you're walking to your car, you can have a drink of water, and you're going to get yourself home safe to your family. Not everybody can do that. I've without doubt got the best of a bad job. No question about it. No question about it.
Yes, and I've got goosebumps hearing you say that. However, you said yourself, you've got the best of a bad job, but you still got a bad job. So you still got, motor. So and this is going back to the gratitude thing you mentioned earlier, and I want to I didn't get back to it. How can you be? And I get it. You're not as, you're better than them. Some of the people that you see, you're in a much, but you still got it compared to somebody else who's 53 and haven't got it. So how are you grateful? How do you? And I ask because I generally want to learn. I want the listeners to learn. Like, woe is me is one of the worst states you can be in. Think, oh, it's not fair. Life's against me. That's a shit place to be in your life. But it's so easy to be in because we all go through shit. So how do you wake up and be grateful when your left leg doesn't move properly? You got a bit of splinting, you can't stand very long, maybe you go to the post office, you can't stand up, you're a bit wobbly, whatever. Why are you grateful? Because many 53-year-olds, they can walk normal, they can go to the pub, they can go for a jog, they can run after their grandkids. How do you remain grateful?
I remain grateful for, first of all, because of the love and the support that I've got around me. And I know that sounds a little bit corny, but somebody said to me once, they were explaining their journey, and they said, Clive, I remind myself every day that I love and I am loved. Now, it's not that long ago, Anthony, I was far too big and cool to come out with a statement like that. But boy, oh boy, that's powerful. It's the simplest, most powerful thing. It really hit me. I love and I am loved. So that gives me real pride. My boys are bigger and uglier than me now. My grandchildren are absolutely
poor buggers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully, thankfully, they look after them. They take after their mom. But so I've learned through making, and you'll hear in a minute, some terrible mistakes and how to deal with it. I've learned that I have the ability now to use my journey as a positive force. My story, and we have only even just scratched the surface so far, but hopefully by the end of this conversation, this will make sense. I have a gift now. I have a story that I'm fortunate enough to articulate. I'm confident. I'm a confident guy, and I have the ability to talk to people, whether it be a CEO of an organisation or the many, many inmates that I talk to in and out of prisons all over the country. And my story, when I tell it, it's not like that. It's like that. It's
for those that are listening to this, Clive it's not a downward trajectory, it's an upward trajectory, right?
Absolutely.
That's
Sorry about
haven't
that.
got the visual.
I forgot about
No, not at all, mate. No, this is great, and we're having a conversation. Yeah, your story is an uplifting, inspiring story. That's exactly why you're on the podcast. It's not a woe is me, feel sorry for myself podcast, which we can all get wrapped up in sometimes, especially when you've gone through the stuff you've gone through. Given many people are given a terminal illness, a lot of them do go on that downward spiral, the slippery slope floor, rather than find the positives. I'm so eager to learn more about. So I want to stop interrupting. I want you to do your thing and tell your story, please.
No, well, thank you. So here I am, as not just me and my family. We've got this diagnosis, and we're learning to deal with it. We're learning to accept it. We're learning to see it and meet it head on. And I'm not in denial. I know exactly where this journey is going, but it's up to me how to steer that journey. It's up to me.
Ooh, yes,
It's
yes.
definitely up to me, you know, and it allows me, and this is another thing that I'm grateful for. It's another thing that's allowed me to look at life through a completely different lens. My perspective, and I completely lost perspective. That's next in my story. Perspective is our superpower, Anthony. It's so important, and losing that perspective is definitely a slippery slope. And I lost that, but I look at life very differently.
Two quick
Of
questions.
course,
What have they said in terms of? I mean, I find it really hard talking to somebody who's being diagnosed with something like terminal. I don't want to say, look, how long you got, but when
yeah,
they
no, no,
like, how long have you got, like kind of
yeah, of
thing.
course.
And secondly, you said your perspective has changed. What was your perspective pre-diagnosis and as it is now post-diagnosis?
And mate, two really good questions there. So, the first one, I can remember vividly, like it was yesterday. We're sitting in that consultation room in Oxford, and we've been told that without any shadow of a doubt, because I did say, well, do you not want to do any more tests? You know, do you want to, you know, can we come and try and do things a different way? Is there any grey area? But obviously they don't give that diagnosis out until they're absolutely sure. And my wife said and was thinking exactly what you've just said. And she just said to, it's either Professor Turner or Toll, but I always forget because that's the two names. And she said, what are we looking at? How long? And I can remember her saying 20, 25 years. And he went, too optimistic, Mrs. Branson. You can't. No. Just we need to manage your expectations, is what he said. I didn't say a word. And my wife said, well, what, 15? You know, and what he actually said to her was 10 to 15. But in the paperwork that we got in a week's time, you know, where you get a full written report of the consultation, it said 5 to 10 years. And that's been quoted a few times. But thankfully, I'm living proof. You can kick that out the way. I'm not interested in your 5 or 10 years. I'm doing better than that. So I think I'm going to go much closer to my wife's estimation that I am theirs. So
Nice. And why is that? Why do you think that? Is it a
because
mental resolve?
it is mental resolve, but it also is without doubt a dose of harsh reality. So, you know, I feel vulnerable, you know, many times. Everybody does, and nobody likes to feel vulnerable. But I struggle with things this year that I was doing easily and not thinking about last year, and it makes me think. And I am a realist. You know, I can't do the walks that we used to do. I get stuck, and I just can't do it. Like you said about the post office, if there's a queue, I don't even try it anymore. I don't want to embarrass myself. You know, sometimes if I stumble a little bit, if I turn around, you know, I know people look at me and think he's drunk, you know, and it doesn't offend me, you know. I just think, well, I probably do look a bit like I've had a drink, but it's every day, it's every day's reality, and it's allowing me to just, you know, distance adds enchantment to the view, doesn't it? It just allows me to sit back and look at it and think, okay, well, if you'd have looked at the trajectory that was suggested and look at me now today, they are genuinely way out. I should have been in a wheelchair by now. I should be possibly receiving oxygen, because obviously, ultimately, the muscles, it stops you being able to breathe. I do sometimes have a lazy swallow, but I have medication for that. So it's everyday life. It's everyday life that bolsters my belief that I've torn that time frame up in two pieces, and I've got my own.
That's amazing. Distance adds enchantment to the view.
It really does.
That's nice. I love that.
I'd love to say
I love
that's
that.
mine. I'd love to say that's mine. It's not.
Have it, pinch it.
Yeah,
Pinch
yeah.
it, it's yours now.
Yeah, edit this and we'll tell everybody I thought about it. But it's a beautiful thing, and it's true.
Explain that. Explain that. Is that basically explain what you mean by that?
Because sometimes when we're faced,
Your quote that you just have made up and invented on the Getting Back Up podcast. Explain that quote.
well, obviously I can explain it because it's mine. I think about it a lot, and what it does, and perhaps this is because I'm an old thing now, but distance adds enchantment to the view. It means you're allowed to look at something one step removed and look at it with open, honest eyes with perspective. Now, when I was younger, I didn't have the maturity or the ability to do that. I was very reactionary. I'd have had a row in an empty house, Anthony. So I didn't have the ability. I was reactional. Whereas now, I definitely, particularly if it's a tricky situation or a sensitive one, it doesn't have to be about me. It could be about anything. I have the ability now, with maturity, to step one back and think, hang on, leave that there. I'm going to go back to that this afternoon or this evening or tomorrow, and I'm going to look at it with some fresh eyes and some new perspective. And it normally allows me clarity. It gives clarity so that when you do have to make a decision, even if that decision is just deciding how it's going to make you feel, you get a clearer perspective.
Yeah, that's brilliant, mate. I love that. That's one thing I'm taking away from this podcast, 100%. And do you know what I'm going to do, mate? When I say that quote, I'm going to pinch it like you pinched it. I'm going to say it's mine.
Do it.
So back to your story. So I interrupted. You said you were crippled by anxiety, and you mentioned before, a big gob, redhead. You can have a row with yourself in a house. Not somebody that would suffer from anxiety. I know somebody that suffer from like panic attacks. So dive into that one, please, mate.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. If you'd have said to any of my friends, colleagues in the MOD, anybody, Clive, is he a candidate for have his mental health compromised? Would he get nervous or anxious? They'd say, you must be joking. Clive, he's the one we go to if there's a problem. He's the one that turns up at the industrial tribunals or whatever I used to do. No, absolutely not. But this actively demonstrates once again that anxiety, depression, stress, all these things, they can hit anybody at any time, and a lot of the time they're not that far away. And we all deal with things different. We all have different filters, and we all have the ability to absorb different levels of it. But I went, and grieving for my dad was a big part of this, but I didn't realise it because I didn't understand grief, Anthony. I hadn't lost anybody really close to me. I didn't understand that it was a different process for everybody. So that was in the background. Obviously, I got the diagnosis. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I'm the provider. What's going to happen now? What about my wife? What about the bills? And all that stuff. I became so anxious. I went from being in the car a lot to not in the car at all, to being outside, to being in the house, to being in the bedroom, to being under the bed, under the duvet, within probably 2-3 weeks maximum. And I was terrified. Strong word, that. If I can just explain that. I can remember, like it was yesterday, the terror, because if it was raining or windy, I could see that the roof of my house was coming off. There was no ifs or buts. It was going to be ripped off. And what am I going to do then? What are we going to do? How am I going to protect my family? It was so real. I was shaking. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. I couldn't communicate. So ultimately, my wife's thinking, well, who on earth do you go to? Do you have a problem like this? And she was eventually guided towards something called a crisis team. The crisis team came out to visit me twice, and then ultimately I was taken into psychiatric hospital. And I stayed in 2 psychiatric hospitals for a total of 10 weeks, which is quite a long period of time. A scary place, Anthony. Scary place.
Explain what that's like. What kind of thing do you do? Is it like, from my lack of any knowledge of psychiatric hospitals, you're in a straitjacket in a padded room, sitting there, and you're shaking, getting fed like tablets to kind of calm you down. Is that right? Is the depiction on films correct, or is it?
There is certainly a thick end of that, no doubt about it. I was taken in, and you sort of, they're assessing you immediately because they can sense how you're feeling and how you're reacting. I was taken into a room. I was told that this would be my room, but I didn't really know what they were saying or what they were doing. And there's a structure and there's a system. There's a lot of nurses. There's a lot of nurses that are look more like bouncers. And there's a lot of really poorly people in there. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of confrontation. And there's a lot of fear in there. But there's also an awful lot of rehabilitation as well.
Of course, I'm sure they do. The job that they do is a very hard job, the nurses and the doctors in there, and it may be very difficult, so fair play to them. Did you feel, when you were around the noise... let me preface this. I've had many operations in my life, from injuries and boxing and so on, so forth. And even when I'm in pain, I feel like I'm still an athlete, like the guy that could, an athlete, right? And then I go to hospital and I'm around people that haven't used a bedpan, or they're screaming and they're moaning and they're hearing the machines beeping. I feel ill. I feel sick. I feel like a wounded soldier. So when you entered the psychiatric hospital, did you ever feel crazy?
I felt like, okay, well, this is me now. This is my world then. That guy there that's next to me that can't help it, but he's screaming his head off. And he clearly is not exactly sure of where he is. There's a guy over there that's looking at me like he really does want some sort of confrontation, because he just feels that I'm new, I've just come in, and he feels he's got to do that. And I don't want to martyr myself here. I wasn't scared. There was no fear. I was poorly myself, absolutely poorly. So it took me, looking back, it took me a good 2 weeks to regain any form of genuine effective perspective, to then allow me to slowly get better. And I'll tell you exactly how it happened. My wife was obviously visiting me. I'm told after that a couple of my really, really close lifelong friends came to visit me, and it was...
You can't remember that? You can't remember your friends?
Not the early days, no. I definitely can't. It was all a bit of a blur, and they were experimenting with different medications and things. But I do remember sitting there with my wife, and again the noise and the chaos, and I just saw her for who she is. I just thought, hang on a minute, that's Vic. We are a team. She needs me. She's coming here to visit me. For the first time I thought, well, where's she going to go? Oh, hang on a minute, she's got to get in the car, she's got to go home, and she's got to do all the normal mundane stuff. Keep everybody going, probably answer a million questions, and then come back today and visit me all over again. And I just thought, wow, I really need to take stock, and I really need to get back on that team. And it was perspective that did that for me, which is why I keep repeating the word, because it's so important. So then I began to become more alert, be more accepting of my position. I then was having consultations with psychiatrists, and they were obviously pleased with the feedback that they were getting. At this point, I was then allowed some time out on the grounds with my family on visits. Then I was allowed half days at home, and then ultimately overnights at home. And this was a strange period, and it sounds really strange saying this, but I loved being at home and I loved seeing everybody, but the hospital was my safe place. Isn't that bizarre? And it might be because of responsibility, or I'm not, if I'm honest, I don't really know. But I was almost begging the nurse for some reassurance that that room would still be open for me when I got back the following day. It was almost like a safety net. And yet I'm talking about a room in a psychiatric hospital. But eventually that, of course, waned. And the time I spent with my family, I slowly started to absorb all that love and support. and ultimately I was allowed home. Now, this is a real crucial part of my journey, and it'll be something that you can resonate with, Anthony, with your incredible inspirational journey. It is. It really is.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
For a number of
exactly
reasons.
what you're going to say now.
I lost my identity. I didn't. All those hats that I wore organically, naturally, with huge pride, I'm thinking, well, there's my son, but he's talking to me. He's a little bit on eggshells. He doesn't want to say the wrong thing. My wife's fussing around me. She wants to make sure I'm okay and comfortable. And, and there was little things. You couldn't close the door because I didn't say anything, but I couldn't cope with the door being closed. I couldn't drive. They took my license off me for 12 months anyway, but that was fine. But I couldn't. I tried going to the supermarket with my wife, but it was just the people. I couldn't be around people. I thought they were all looking at me, and of course they weren't. But this was because I'd got an identity crisis. I'm no longer the guy that did everything naturally before. I'm not providing for my family, but guess what? I'm also a burden as well. If as I said before, if I'm a problem now, what am I going to be like in 5-10 years time? They don't need this. They don't need this. And I had to find and forge in my own mind, before I tried to articulate it or manifest it in any actual physical actions, I had to accept my position and decide, how am I going to move forward? Not sit still, definitely not look in the rearview mirror. I need to be productive, positive, and I need to be dad, granddad, friend again. And once I accepted that, and once I could see it as a bit of a challenge, it's a bit scary, but it's like anything. If you've got a problem, or the doctor says there's something wrong with you, if you accept it and if you recognize it with true reflection and true honesty, you're in a better position to deal with it. And that's exactly.
I guess there's it's natural to want to deny it at first, isn't it? It's that natural denial, of course. Obviously, the stages of it. It takes a while to get to that acceptance level, but once you do accept, you can then actually deal with it.
Yeah. Oh no, well, obviously, Anthony, you know, on a huge scale. I mean, we'll perhaps have this conversation on another day. But being a boxing fan and being accepted into the boxing fraternity, which I'll get to in a minute, but the challenge that you guys and girls have when you've been a professional fighter, whether you're approaching retirement, whether you get shoved into retirement through no fault of your own too early, such as you, sir, whatever the circumstances around that retirement, the identity crisis that you guys and girls must face is just, I can't imagine it. Absolutely everything, your whole DNA has been engineered to be a fighter. Your training, your social world, it dictates your relationships. It dictates everything. Anyway, listen, don't get me started because we'll be here all day. But I go on. Sorry.
You're a really knowledgeable man. You're a really knowledgeable man, and you're really well rounded. And I can tell from all the things that happened to you for the last few years. Maybe you weren't that guy before. But I can see you mentioned earlier the distance makes the view more enchanted, and the distance, all the things you've done. I can, without knowing you from before, I can see your growth. Your perspective on stuff, and that's when you think you're at the top of the game of anything, and you haven't got to learn anymore. That's when you get a quick slapper on the face. A quick reality comes and says, actually, maybe you're not so good as you think you are. And I'll touch upon something you mentioned earlier. I mentioned how you weren't a candidate for anxiety or going down the route. Now, I've never been through anything nowhere near to the depths in which you've sank to, and I'm so proud of you for kind of climbing back up and being you again, and being so inspiring now and sharing your story, which we'll come on to. But same thing with me, mate. I thought like panic attacks and anxiety. I didn't think it was a load of rubbish. I knew it was a real thing, but I thought that stuff can't happen to me. I'm hard as fuck. I'm tough. I'm a boxer, junior Olympic champion, junior world champion, Olympic medalist. I'm hard. Like, I'm resolute. I'm resilient. Like, I can't. I'm sure I can get the ump now and then, but man, I had a panic attack a number of years ago. I had to go to hospital. I generally thought I was having a brain aneurysm. I generally thought I was going to die. I remember when I was in America, I was by myself. Well, I was, to a degree, I had my roommate with me, a friend of mine, but he's my roommate. It wasn't, my wife or a family member. And then I said to him, mate, call the ambulance. I went, oh fuck, I'm thinking of having a brain aneurysm. And he, and the poor thing panicked, and he Googled, he said, his car was right there. We were at a restaurant. And it crept up on me. I had no idea. I'd never so much as, I'd had bad days. I'd been through a lot of stuff in my life, and obviously a lot of people who said to me, you specialise in this, like, I can't believe it took you so long to have one. And when it came, boy, did it come. Goodness me. And he said, mate, there's a hospital 5 minutes away, so I will drive you there. I said to him, I haven't got 5 minutes. I generally thought within the next 5 minutes, my mum had a brain aneurysm, just before our boxing Olympics, actually, and when, thankfully, she survived it, and when we've spoken about it, the symptoms that she experienced just before it happened was what I was experiencing. So I was sure from the head punches I've taken in my life, and as a wrestler, the bang my head on the floor and stuff, I thought, there was terror. You mentioned earlier, terrifying. Terrifying is a really powerful word, and there's a difference between being a bit frightful, being a bit scared, and terrified. I was terrified in this moment, in a country by myself, in a foreign country. My friend rang the ambulance, and a fire brigade came. I said to him, mate, I haven't got 5 minutes. And a fire brigade came and took him to the ambulance, and I was panicking. I laugh now to kind of like to trivialize it, but as I mentioned, it was a very scary process, and he strapped me down on the bed. And I'm thrashing around, I'm going nuts. I'm a big dude, 16.5 stone, and I can, obviously have a go if I need to. And the poor fireman has strapped me down in the bed, and he went to me, calm down, sir. He said, you're just having a panic attack. Done on my vitals and stuff. I went, you fucking what? I thought, I'm now gonna die, and he's telling me I'm having a panic attack. I went, I don't have panic attacks. It's not me. Do you know who I am? And I'm thrashing around to go to the hospital. And they went to me, it's just a panic attack. I was like, oh, it's just a panic attack. And an MRI scan of my brain was like something like $3,000, something silly. And I thought, well, let me just have an MRI scan. And she went, look, we see these all the time. It's a panic attack. It's an extreme one, but you can get an MRI scan, but it's like $3,000. And I was like, oh, I almost wanted to have the MRI scan to prove that it wasn't just a panic attack. In the end, it was just a panic attack. And I was like, oh, this mental health thing is serious, it's real. Even happens to, and I quote, people like me that isn't a candidate for this stuff. So, yeah, man, I mean, it's literally, it's our mental health. And this is what I do. I've got a fitness app, and my mental, and I focus on mental, I call it mental fitness. I focus on mental health, mental fitness, just as much as physical fitness, because we need to look after our mental with health. Like people go to the gym or you work out, do some press ups, go for a run, and our physical fitness can improve. The mental health is the exact same. If we spend time on our mental fitness, we become mentally healthier. And these things, and I think we need to look at mental health the same as we do our physical health, and that's what I try to do in my Ogogo fitness app. Mate, I basically just wanted to share that story with you, just and the listeners, that like, you can be the biggest, toughest person in the world. You can think you're bulletproof. None of us are bulletproof. Every single one of us on the planet, if we get shot in the head with a bullet, we're gonna die. It's gonna happen. None of us are bulletproof. Emotion, and we need to look after ourselves. We can make ourselves as strong and robust as possible, but you only do that by working on yourself. And I can tell, mate, from the way you're talking, you've really worked on yourself these last 5-10 years, and you should be very proud of yourself. And I'm really proud of you for where you are in your journey now. So, do you know, kind of back to you, mate. The emphasis is back on you now. So, following that, so where are you now? So, what do you do now?
Okay. Well, firstly, thanks for sharing that story, because that'll resonate with a lot of people because of who you are, and you are very much, in some people's eyes, a real genuine tough guy. There's no two way, mentally and physically. So to share that vulnerability is very powerful. So I think you've done a wonderful thing there. But so where was I? So this is exactly what I did, and I smile because I'm an open book, Anthony, and I just tell it like it is. So I'm at home, there's nobody in, and I'm thinking, what can I do? I need to do something. So I can cycle a little bit better than I can walk, as long as it's not impact driven, isn't it? As long as it's on a level ground. So I got a pen and a pad, and I wrote down 12 times, hello, my name's Clive, I'm 47, whatever I was at the time, and I'm looking for some light gardening or maintenance work. And I got on my bike and I cycled within a mile radius of the poshest, nicest houses that I could find. Certainly not a lot posher and nicer than mine. And I'm thinking, he's not cutting his grass, I'll put one in there, and she's not cutting her grass in there. And Anthony, I tell you the truth, about 6 or 7 of them came straight back to me, and I'm still doing it today. I've been in someone's garden this morning, only for a couple of hours, where I used to be able to do, a bit more. They're all just wonderful people. They trust me. I've got keys and padlocks and alarms and all sorts of these places. And I just go in and I help whatever's needed on the day. And that, they know my position, because sometimes it's very obvious. But again, we have a laugh and a joke. It's open. Sometimes they want to talk about it or ask me how I'm doing, or sometimes they're not. And I wouldn't be without it. Being outside, in the fresh air, cold day today, but I still went, still enjoyed it. Listened to my podcasts, listened to some music, not the stuff that my 16-year-old listens to, because I'm sorry, that's just not music. It's just not. But I listen to anything and everything, and it's incredible. So that's what I started.
What did you listen to? What was on a podcast today? What was on the Spotify today?
Well, in the old days, if it wasn't Paul Weller, I wasn't listening to it. But I listen to all sorts of stuff now. I listen to some rock stuff. I listen to R&B. I listen to Motown. And then there's new characters. Do you know what? I saw somebody on Graham Norton the other night, an American guy, and I think his name was Teddy Swims or something.
Teddy Swims on, mate. He's my mate.
You're joking.
He's my mate. Teddy, yeah, mate, he's my mate. Big lad. Teddy, yeah, mate. Tattoo on the head. Teddy Swims is a really good friend of mine. He was on the Graham Norton show, was he?
Listen, that guy can sing. Boy,
mate, he is. Oh. So he's from Georgia. So I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live now. He's from Georgia. He's a lovely guy. We're friend. We got connected by DDP. He's my wrestling mentor, and he's a really good friend of mine. The boy can sing. So one of my favourite things to do is, I don't drink that heavily anymore, but if I do have a few glasses of wine or a few shandies on a Saturday night, my favourite thing to do on a Sunday morning is put Teddy Swims on. He's got some unbelievable songs himself. His songs are great, but I love his covers. He does some covers which you couldn't like. You think of an original song, how can that be made better? Not better per se, but just different. And he's, oh goodness me, on a Sunday, if you're ever hungover, listen to this, if you're hungover, Teddy Swims, he's got tattoos over his head, but and when you think like, oh, tattoos, covered in tattoos, you think of and it's just natural to think of, oh, he must be a certain way. He's an absolute sweetheart. He's a teddy bear. He's such a sweet, kind, gentle, beautiful human being. I love that guy, and he can sing so well. How random is that?
You'll catch him on Catch Up or however that works, but it was on last weekend and he sang. I've never heard of him, I've never seen him, but I normally just delete things, but I've kept that on and I've listened to it back, and I just thought, what a raw talent. He deserves worldwide fame, and I'm sure he'll get it. So
yeah, and I'm going to send him this clip. I'm going to send him this, mate.
Oh, he's unbelievable.
It's always nice to hear stuff.
He blew me away. He's one of these guys that he could stand up in a pub and just sing. No support, no backing, no preparation. He's just got real, genuine, God-given talent. and he'd silence the room instantly. What a guy.
Yeah, and the most raucous of pubs as well. Like, you go to a pub like Meathead Pub, people like where singers don't go to. He could give him 30 seconds, and even the toughest guy is there, open mouth, going, "Oh yeah." So anyway, this isn't the Teddy Shrimps. He'll get a go on the podcast at some point. He's gonna join us with his presence. But this is Clive Branson. So yeah, carry on, mate. So you listen to, and all that in the garden and stuff. You're moving. Back to fitness, like fitness is stuff. Using on the bike, you're moving. You're getting your endorphins pumping around the body. Your endorphins are a natural painkiller. That's what endorphins are. They're painkillers. You're getting dopamine in your brain. You're getting serotonin, which uplifts your mood. So you maybe can't go to a gym and blast anymore, but you're getting your movement. You're getting your activity, and also you're meditating. Listen to podcasts. You're listening to music. Teddy Swims. You're making yourself feel good. Like that is protecting your physical health and your mental health, and that's why you're able. You mentioned it perfectly earlier. Another aspect of mental health, and I'm very passionate about this subject, is mental fitness. Sorry, is when you like in physical fitness, you push it and you get fitter. You get fitter over time, and you can do things more once you spend time on your physical fitness that you couldn't beforehand. Same thing with mental fitness. Now, I think me and you are kind of similar characters. When younger, something happens, you react. Finger pointing, shouting, swearing, you're reacting. Time, and I think comes maturity. But maturity, also spending time working on your mental fitness, you've got more of a capacity. So rather than reacting, you respond. Now, there's a massive difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is emotional, it's immediate. Respond, you may take a beat. It could be a second, it could be 10, it could be a day. But responding, and when you respond in a different way than you react. That's all mental fitness, and you're training it every single day, and you're adding to that resolve, and you're a healthier person battling the disease that you're fighting against it. And Rocky says it's not about how hard you can hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And you're getting hit by this motor neuron disease and all the other things you got, but you keep moving forwards. And I said it earlier. This is your story. I'm going to stop talking. I just want to amplify, the things you're just saying. You're just dropping these things out of your mouth like they're not a big deal. They're huge deals, mate. And you should be very proud of yourself. Anyway, please continue.
Thank you, Anthony. So I'm really proud of the fact that I'm still helping these people. Proud that they trust me, proud that I'm, as you say, mentally and physically active. But one of the podcasts I was listening to, it got a bit of a medical element to it, and they said, all guys, when they're in their 40s, certainly when they're approaching 50, they should get their PSA count checked, which is to do with your prostate. Now, that hadn't registered with me because I got absolutely no symptoms, no concerns about it at all. But I have to give blood regularly, which is ironic because I'm the biggest girl's blouse in the hospital. You get the needle out. I'm the guy that flakes out. My wife had a tooth out in hospital a few years ago, and I went with her to support her and to be there. 5 minutes into the procedure, I passed out, hit the deck, and they had to stop what they were doing to come and tend to me. So that's how tough I am, Anthony. So
bloody attention seeker, if you ask me.
It's all about the attention. I say that to the kids all the time. Listen, you don't want to play top trumps with me. So I said to my doctor, look, on the next round of blood tests, because everybody needs to. This is a serious message. Initially, there's no difficult, uncomfortable physical examination anymore. You can just have your PSA count checked in a blood test. So I do that, and I get a call, and he says, listen, Clive, your PSA count is so low, it's 3.2. But that 0.2 has triggered me into a process, and I have to, whether I like it or not, refer you to a urologist. But it's 0.2 over. You've got no symptoms, but you've got to go through the process. But for goodness sake, don't be worrying about it. So I said, no problem. Went to see the urologist. And he said, fantastic guy, amazing guy. And he said, I'd be happier if we did an MRI scan. So we'll go back 2 weeks later, had the MRI scan, go back to see him. I'd be happier if we did a biopsy, Clive. So I said, okay, so I have the biopsy, which in itself, it's embarrassing, it's difficult, it's not painful, but it's uncomfortable. But I had the biopsy. Go back to him a fortnight later, stage 2 prostate cancer. Didn't see that one coming, Anthony. Did not see that one coming. I got one of my sons, Charlie, with me for this appointment, and this is the truth. I looked at him and I smiled and I said, Charlie, how are we going to go back and tell your mum this? Should we even go back and tell your mum this? It's getting a little bit ridiculous. I joke that I'm a one-man drain on the NHS, but it's absolutely true. So my initial reaction is, well, you can have your prostate taken out. It's an operation. It's not ideal, but it's one less thing to worry about. And he said, Clive, you need to slow down. He said, I've done thousands of these, but I've never done it on anybody with motor neuron disease before. I need to do my research, come back in a fortnight's time, which I did. And I said, that's fine, doctor. Do what you got to do, but me and you are best friends. Get your gown ready, get your scalpels out, because you are taking this prostate out. I'll see you in a fortnight. So I go back, and he really had done his research. He not just Oxford, they're the main people that he took direction from, but he'd even emailed and spoke to surgeons around the country, and he showed me this. He said, Clive, not one of them has advised me to do this operation. It's more invasive than you think. And because your trajectory of your slow progressive motor neuron disease is what it is, he said, I affect a number of muscle groups when I do this operation. And the fear is that because of the motor neuron disease, the muscles won't be strong enough to bounce back. And that could involve, we're talking about the ability to talk, you could be incontinent, this is serious things. So there's absolutely no way you can have this operation. So if I'm honest, it took me a while to admit to that. I still sort of was trying to push him and saying, yeah, but look, I'm proving them wrong. I'm this, I'm that. But it wasn't going to happen then, and it's not going to happen now. So I was having quarterly blood tests, which the PSA count has gone up slightly. I'm on 5 or 6 now. So very long story short, they're now saying we should be doing some sort of treatment. It's showing signs of growth. I had a biopsy about 6 months ago. It's still contained, but because you're still fit and well, we're going to start treatment, and that'll either be external radiotherapy, which is great, but it has potential risks. It can affect your bladder and all the other areas that are so close to this beam therapy. And this is another really important message to the guys out there, that there's another option, and it's called brachytherapy. And I thought he was making it up. I thought, well, what on earth is that? And it transpires that it's a much less invasive operation. They insert radioactive seeds into your prostate and they leave it there. And the radiation kills the cancer off over a period of time. And this doctor showed me the evidence of the success rates for people that have had the brachytherapy and people that have had the prostate removed. And the brachytherapy success rate was almost as high as the removal. Because when he said it to me, I was like, yeah, doc, listen, I know you're only saying that because you won't take the damn thing out. But no, and I've done my own research. So I'm awaiting an appointment. I've had a full body scan about 3 weeks ago to make sure that it hasn't spread anywhere else. And I haven't had the results of that yet. But one way or the other, I will be starting some form of treatment, which I embrace. I'd have it done this afternoon. Bring it on, because zap this damn thing. Give me a blood test to show that it's gone back down to 1 or whatever it's going to go to, and I can get on with it and get back to what I'm doing. So that's where I am with cancer. It is.
And that's
scary.
now. This is present day.
Right now, today. I've actually chased the urologist before this wonderful conversation, because A, I want the results of the scan, but B, I want the consultation that will tell me, okay, Clive, we'll press the button on that treatment. What are we waiting for, guys? Come on, get on with it. So that's now. That's very real now. Are you feeling exhausted now, Anthony?
Mate, I just no, no, the opposite, the actual opposite. I feel energized. I really do, mate. You have this energy about you, and we're thousands of miles. I'm in Atlanta. You're back in home country. You're back in England, and but I feel it, mate. I feel how effusive you are, and I feel energized. And you're like, I want it now. I want to get like, let's do this after. I'm with you. Where's
Brilliant.
get the urologist on the phone now. Get him, get him to diagnose.
Brilliant.
Give me the treatment right now, mate. I'm right with you. You have this charm, an enigmatic charm about you, and I'm just, mate. I'm Team Clive, mate. I'm Team
Amazing.
Clive. I
What an
really
honour.
am.
What an honour for you to say that. Amazing. Well, as I said to you at the start, I've got some incredible team members in Team Clive, God-given, heaven-sent members, and yeah, back to that quote where I love and I am loved. Yeah, I'm blessed. But thank you for saying that, because this is okay. We're going to get to this now. So that's very real, and that's going on. So I'm doing my gardening. I can drive again now. That's amazing. I have to have it. My driving license has to be done every 12 months, which is fair enough. And something else that I did while I was sitting there and I'd got that pen. I've got an awful lot of books, Anthony, and they're predominantly either boxing biographies. They are self-made guys and their stories, and true crime. I'm actually quite interested in true crime. So I don't do novels or I don't do fiction, but the books I've got are just unbelievable. But I couldn't read. I couldn't. I don't know what it was. I couldn't. I certainly wouldn't have been able to open this laptop. So I had rediscovered my books, and a book that I read was an autobiography from Jamie Moore. Now, Jamie Moore,
Cool, terrific fighter.
he's labelled the fighter's fighter, isn't he? And because of me being honest that I'm a genuine fan, I had followed his career. He was something else. So I read his book, and I don't know why I did this. I've never done it before, and I've never done it since. But I tried to Google where his gym was, because I wanted to write to him and say, look, I've read your story. It's inspiring. By the way, your career was incredible. If I ever got the opportunity to shake your hands, that'd be great. But either way, I just wanted to tell you the book was great. Well done. Leave my details. Quickly, he tells me that it went to the wrong address. It went to a gym that wasn't even open. He was at the bank by the gym that he says he never goes to, and the postman was walking past and said, Jamie, I've got a letter here for you. I've got nowhere to put it. Do you want it, or shall I chuck it in the van? He said, I'll give it here. So I'm at home. My phone rings. No number, so I ignore it. It rings again. Vicky says, you need to answer it. So I'm sitting there and I says, hello. Hello, mate, it's Jamie. And I went, Jamie who? He says, Jamie Moore, you muppet. Well, this is like Muhammad Ali coming on your podcast. He's a hero of mine. I can't overestimate what you guys and girls mean to me and what you give to a boxing fan like me. I can't ever overestimate that. So, yeah.
What is it, mate? What is it? Why do boxers like inspire you so much? What is it?
Because of your commitment, your dedication, your ability. People say brave, right? Some people have called me brave before. I'm not brave. Bravery is when you see, hear, and smell the fear and still decide to go towards it. That's a brave man or a brave woman. You guys take that to a whole new level. People say, oh, I could do that or I could do this. They have got no idea the level of how you completely dedicate your life, and what you give in that ring is just it completely. I'm totally in the zone, whether it's watching a fight, sparring, whatever it might be. I'm in awe of it, and I'm interested in the intricacies. I'm interested in why a southpaw is so difficult, why two southpaws stand on each other's feet, all these things. So I've learned it, and I'm a bit of a student of the game. So that's, maybe I haven't explained it very well, but what you do completely takes me in. So Jamie said, "Well, come to the gym." And I said, "Jamie, you don't understand. You're going to regret saying that, mate, because I mean, I'll get in the car now." And he laughed and joked. So again, long story short, he was training Carl Frampton at the time. Me and my wife and my youngest went with me. They treated us like, like celebrities. They were treated red carpet treatment. And I ended up back at Jamie's house. And I'm sitting in, and my son's got the Lonsdale belt round him. And I'm sitting there with Carl Frampton, who's training for his next fight over in America. And we're just talking about boxing. And I'm thinking, am I dreaming this? Is this actually happening? And me and Jamie, he's my mate. I see him regularly. I go to the gym. I go to other gyms with him. And just as a mate, I just sit in the background. I've met lots of people. I met Sean O'Hagan there, and what a one-off character. And he's been amazing. He welcomes me at the gym with Josh and Maxie and all those guys. So listen, the fact that the boxing fraternity has allowed me in, somebody like me, I genuinely pinch myself every time I go, but it keeps me buoyant. I treasure it, and I respect it, and it's a real privilege to be invited into these gyms when I am invited in. So yeah, it's just my thing. So that massively helped, and it's taken my level of appreciation to it, and I never thought it could go even higher, but seeing it firsthand, I mean, you'd pay to see some of these spars. So that's pretty much where I am today, Anthony. And the motor neuron disease, it will just carry on. I go every 6 months and I get my checks. The prostate cancer is about to be addressed, so that'll be a bit of a challenge. But I thought to myself, I'm not going to just sit here and wait till I can't do this gardening. What can I do? And I built a career in the Ministry of Defence by talking to people. And I literally Googled on my phone how to become a public speaker. And it came up with speaker bureaus. Well, what's a speaker bureau? And I just dialed them, Anthony. No idea what I was going to say, no prep. And I thought, I've got a story. I'm prepared to, no holds barred, with one intention. And joking apart, it's not the attention. It's because if it resonates, and if I can actively demonstrate, stand in front of a guy or girl and say, these are some of the things that you can do in life that will genuinely help you if and when your mental health is compromised, because they worked for me, and some of the things that didn't work for me. And it gives me so much. The positivity that I try and give out bounces back. And as I said earlier, it might be a room full of barristers and CEOs in London somewhere, or it might be in one of the high security prisons, and I talk to these guys and girls in there. It's always the same. The feeling is the same. The engagement's the same. The feedback's the same. And that is what I do now. I've got a website. It makes me sound like Billy Big Bananas, but it was done because my son's best friend does it for a living, so he did it for nothing. So www.clivebranson.co.uk. You can see what I do. My son introduced me to the world of Instagram. People can follow me on Instagram on Branson Clive, and I'm in competition. I need to get some more followers than him. So, but I just put stuff on there that I'm doing and what I'm thinking about, and it's all for one purpose and one purpose only. It's to use my story as a vehicle to reach people. Now, there might be one thing, Anthony, that you might be able to help me with, because I feel so passionate about the problems and the challenges that you guys and girls have in retirement. The corporate stuff and the stuff that I'm hoping to build a career on, I hope it gets to that stage, I'll be able to provide for my family. But all the volunteering stuff, I've worked with the Frank Bruno Foundation, I've worked with Wolverhampton Wonders Foundation, I do the prisons, etc., etc. If there's anybody who either is a fighter or who is connected to a fighter, whether they're before, during, or after retirement. If they feel, or somebody around them feels, that I could share some pearls of wisdom, I could share some inspiration and some encouragement, what a privilege that would be. And obviously there's no money involved here. I would love to do that for the sport that I love. I'd love to do that.
You have a wonderful story, mate. You really do, and you're very good at telling your story. And what I like about your story is it's ongoing. You're still, it's not something you did 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years ago. You're in it. You're in the midst of it now. And that's why I say I talk to people with inspiring stories, people that have done great things both their life and their career. Only after amid suffering massive setback and adversity, and you've gone through so much setback and you're still going through so much setback. But it's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get and keep moving forwards. And you'll keep moving forwards. And I'm sure people are going to be tremendously inspired by this podcast, Clive. So they can follow you on Instagram at Branson Clive, and your website is www.clivebranson.co.uk. I really hope you get inundated with people want to hear your story. Listen, I've really enjoyed this podcast, mate. It's been fantastic. You know, as I've said, like, you are somebody that I truly admire, mate. I really mean that, and you're still on your journey, and I know you've got so much more to talk about as well. We've got the whole Ministry of Defence career we didn't even touch upon, so I know there's so much. But what I would really like to do this again in the near distant future when you get your understanding of what your prostate cancer treatment will look like. Maybe you go do a few rounds of that. We get you back on and an update, 'cause I'm sure people are going to want to follow you because, as I mentioned a minute ago, you have an enigmatic aura about you, and I feel uplifted after this conversation.
Well, that's so generous of you to say that, Anthony. And this is a mutual sort of a society here because, again, I don't want to keep you, but your story, what you've had to endure and what you've done with your life is truly, truly inspiring. The fact that you've gone through all that, and then here I am talking to you on your own podcast, thousands of miles away in America. You're signed up to the elite wrestling in America that's based in Florida, I believe. You are the governor. Honestly, what you should be incredibly, incredibly proud of yourself because you are an inspiration.
Very kind, mate. I think it's very, very kind. It's just, this is called getting back up for a reason, because we do get knocked down in life, and you can stay there. Of course, you can stay there if you want to stay there. But where's the glory in that? I think in my life, you have to get back up and go again, and dust yourself off. And in boxing, the great fight, they got all the best, all the greatest fighters get knocked down. Probably other than Marvin Hagler. Did Marvin Hagler go down once? I think in his career, maybe. Not sure if I don't think he got what, maybe he didn't. But most of the greats go down. Ali went down, Neil went down, Robinson, and it's about getting back up.
Anthony, somebody once said to me, Clive, come on, you only live once. Do you know what my answer to that is? You're wrong, son, because you get to live every single day.
And that's perspective, as you mentioned earlier. That's perspective.
But thank you, Anthony. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you very much for giving me your time tonight. It's been an absolute privilege.
You're very welcome, sir. And until the next time, you take care.
And you.
You look after yourself. Keep that same enthusiasm for life up. That's what's getting you through this. And we'll be on again in a few months' time, okay?
Take care, Anthony.
Take care. All the best. Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.
I love and I am loved. Something so simple and yet so powerful, and those words have helped change Clive's perspective. Before I go on, I want to thank Clive for coming on the Getting Back Up podcast. We've been in regular contact via email since, and Clive, mate, you're top bloke. You really are. You're a wonderful person. You speak so well, and I know you want to really push your public speaking now. So if anybody listening to this wants to hear more of Clive's story or or like Clive's story, want to recommend him, and you can find him, Clive Branson. Check him out on social media, and really let's get him out there, because he's changed the lives of so many people just by this podcast and being so honest and talking about some of the things he talked about. I know it can have a massive effect on the world. You got a gift, Clive, and I hope you pursue it, along with your cutting the grass and being an amazing partner, husband, father, and grandfather to your family. A couple of things I made a few notes during that podcast, and I'm only going to say a couple of things, but Clive, you are also a wordsmith, sir. You say many things, and a few things I've made a note. As I mentioned, I love and I am loved. Something so small, something so simple can make you just change your whole mindset and perspective on life, and I like that. You talk about perspective. Now, for the regular weekly listeners of the Getting Back Up podcast, you know that I love talking about perspective. Perspective, and as your words are, perspective is our superpower. And I like to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's so simple. And I'll keep saying it, because that is indicative of how to live a good life, how to lead a prosperous life full of gratitude and love and happiness, opposed to want and need and all the negative things that come with that. I'll keep saying it, because maybe you've heard me say that, maybe it hasn't clicked yet. And I'm sure I heard that quote before. But at some point in my life, when I was ready to hear it, I heard it and it stuck. So I'll keep talking about perspective. And one thing I mentioned on the podcast at the time, and I love this one: distance adds enchantment to the view. Oof. Distance adds enchantment to the view. Wow, that's a good one. I think we can all relate to that. I know. They say sleep on it. Go to bed, look at it again in the morning, and it's mad how you can have emotions one day, then you go to bed, you sleep, you're like, and then you look at that same thing differently. You distance it, adds enchantment to the view. I love that, man. So thank you so much. I want 100%. I'm gonna steal that quote and say that's an original Ogogo. Clive, thank you so much, guys. Everyone, I hope you really enjoyed this podcast. Every single week we roll on new guest after new guest after new guest, inspiring story after inspiring story after inspiring story. This is your weekly dose of hope and inspiration. Clive is battling so many wars at the same time. Yeah, he's still here. He's still in the fight. Trish Dixon said way back when on the Getting Back Up podcast, always stay in a fight. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's scary. Yes, sometimes you feel like you want to tap out and give up, but don't. Always stay in a fight. And Clive isn't just staying in the fight. He's not just surviving, he's thriving. Living his best life. Yes, he limps a little bit. Yes, he's got some other ailments, but Clive is alive. And what a dude. And I can sing this man's praises again, because I thoroughly enjoyed that podcast, and I'm so glad you found a belonging within the boxing community. Clive, listen, dude, great to meet you. Wish you all the very best, and I look forward to doing a part 2, because I know there's so much we didn't touch upon. Wow. Guys, I'm sure, you might come across a setback this coming week. You might struggle a little bit. You might get hit hard even. You might even go down. But remember, when you find yourself on a seat of your pants, or lying flat back on your back looking up, or lying flat out on your back looking up, just know that there's one thing that you can do. That's always get back up. I'll see you again next week. Take care.